Good morning. Welcome back for those of you who were already with us. For this 5th edition of Emerging Valley, we are going to talk about environmental issues and biodiversity. 2.0 solutions based on nature. How can Africa and Europe innovate together to regenerate biodiversity? So this plenary is supported by the Bouches du Rhône department. We have the Vice President of the Council, Didier Réau. Her Excellence Minister Lydie Bea-Semda, the Minister for Higher Education, Scientific Research and Innovation in Chad. Please give her a round of applause. She came from N'Djamena to take part in this plenary. Please give a round of applause to Mr. Didier Réau, the Vice President of the Department Council of the Bouches du Rhône. He is in charge of nature-based solutions. Corinne Brugnon-Meunier, the Managing Director of the IRD, the Institute of Research for Development. Mrs. Patricia Ricard, she's the president of the Oceanography Institute, the Paul Ricard Oceanography Institute. Ange Frédéric Balma, the founder of L'IFILED in Abidjan, in the Ivory Coast. Welcome, Ange. And finally, Sarah Toumi should be with us online. She is the coordinator of the Green Wall Accelerator. Hello, Sarah. How are you? So Sarah is with us, and she'll be telling us about the Great Green Wall project. So, in the wake of the COVID-19 pandemic, with the intensification of extreme climate events, there has been a growing support in favor of addressing environmental issues. This was at the agenda of the Nature Summit in Marseille, as well as the World Summit at the Élysée in January 2021. This edition of Emerging Valley is under the umbrella of the President Macron. So Africans could lead by example in the field of biomimicry. This is about placing nature at the heart of creating solutions. So how can we combine digital systems and the natural world? How can we use digital solutions to address climate-related issues, to use nature as an ally? To work on this topic, yesterday at the Faro, we organized a co-construction lab with Ange. Patricia was there, the IRD was there, the Bouches du Rhône department was there too, about how biomimicry and nature-based solutions that emerge on the African continent can provide inspiration for Europe, and how we can better disseminate these innovations between the two continents. So we will hear a report on this meeting from Didier Réau and Patricia, who was there yesterday. Along with Ange, they moderated the lab, and they will be able to share their experiences and tell us about the outcomes of this lab. My first question, Dear Minister, Your Excellence, we are very honored to welcome you in Marseille today. The question I would like to ask you is, what are the main environmental challenges that Chad is facing today? What actions are being developed by the government in terms of scientific research and innovation in Chad to protect biodiversity, and actions that could provide a model for the rest of the continent? Thank you, Samir. I would like to say hello to all the other participants today and tell you how delighted I am to be part of such an important event for the African continent. and in particular for my country, I think that this is a very important initiative. Going back to your question, I come from Chad. This country is part of the Sahel area. Our surface area is 1.8 thousand square kilometers. 10% of the country, 85% are in the Sahel area and 45% are in the Sahara. Chad has a major potential in terms of biodiversity. Today, the country is regarded as one of the countries with the highest potential in the Saharan area. We have a major network of protected areas, about 10 of them, including 3 parks and 7 fauna reserves. And yet the Chad has not finished exploring this potential in terms of biodiversity. There's still some work to be done in order to have a comprehensive understanding of this environment. Today, in terms of preserving biodiversity, our major challenges are climate vulnerability and environmental vulnerability. Recent studies have highlighted the fact that there is a high variability in terms of climate, in particular concerning rainfall, and this is bound to continue until 2030. So this poses a major challenge for the country. The second issue is the rise of temperature by 1 or 2 degrees, which is also a major problem for the country. In addition, the land is increasingly taken up by agricultural units. The country has an agro-pastoral economy, which means that demographic pressure creates pressure on our natural resources. There's a high level of predation by humans. In 38 years, between 1975 and 2013, there's been a loss of savanna of 17%. This means that agricultural land has trebled. We have 22% of sandy areas, meaning that the ecosystem is being degraded. We must preserve our environment to improve our resilience to climate change. Our agricultural forest ecosystems must be preserved. We are part of a group of countries in Africa. There's a federation in Central Africa, COMIFA. We are part of the Federation of Sahelian countries as well. And in order to tackle the challenge of environmental vulnerability and climate vulnerability, Chad has adopted a sectorial approach, including international programs such as the Convention for Biodiversity, for fighting desertification. We work with the United Nations Programme for Climate Change, and we have developed a number of national strategies and plans to mitigate the effects of climate change. We have 2 laws, one about the general principles of the protection of the environment. The second is on the status of the forests, of the fauna, and of wildlife. Chad is collaborating with a range of partners to ensure that we can bring answers to the deterioration of ecosystems. Today, between 1983 and 2010, a number of projects have taken place to control water resources, because of course this is a crucial issue in the country. So we've implemented around 100 projects in this area. We have policies aimed at restoring damaged soil. I think we will get a presentation later on this topic. And our partners are delivering programs to maintain certain categories of fauna in reserves around the country. So this is an overview of the efforts that Chad is making today to contribute to preserving biodiversity. Thank you very much. Please give us a round of applause. Chad is at the heart of a phenomenal program called the Great Green Wall, and we're very happy to have the coordinator of the program, Sarah Toumi. Before we go back to this topic in more detail, I wanted to go back to the work session we did yesterday. So before I hand over to Mr. Didier Rhône, I would like to hear from you, Patricia. Yesterday, you were the moderator of our co-construction lab on biomimicry, which brought together about 20 participants, including half from African startups, as well as researchers and representatives of local bodies, such as the Federation for Mediterranean Forests and representatives of the Departmental. As usual, Patricia, you've been very active during the lab. What can you tell us about the potential of biomimicry-based innovations and nature-based solutions in terms of biodiversity? Could we review the innovations based on biomimicry that you found particularly striking, in particular regarding the preservation of the sea? I know that Sarah will talk to us about forests, but what did you find the most interesting in this paradigm that consists in placing nature at the heart of innovation? Thank you. What amazed me yesterday was that there was already a consensus. So these questions have undergone a lot of progress. Behind biodiversity and biomimicry, we need to think in terms of ecosystemic services. There is no economy without biodiversity. There is no agriculture, and so on. So many aspects of the economy rely on biodiversity and on the ecosystemic services provided by animals and ecosystems. The living world is an instrument of survival for us. What we're seeing today, thanks to science and thanks to our ability to observe things on a nanoscale, we have a better understanding of the living world, how nature builds its materials, how insects have all these amazing aptitudes. So by immersing ourselves in this knowledge and through working across disciplines, we are able to come up with remarkable innovations. The living world is highly sustainable. Biomimicry includes the fact that all innovations must be sustainable. Yesterday, we looked at a theme that's very important to the IRD called sustainability science. Today, the roadmap for all countries and continents is about how to stay on Earth, how to stay dry, how to reduce our carbon emissions, and how to slow down the erosion of biodiversity. And The living world is a great source of solutions with ecosystemic approaches to work together with low carbon solutions. If you look at, for instance, a termite hill, termites have very low carbon systems that use a system of tunnels to provide a lower temperature. For instance, we have wind turbines that take inspiration from the shapes of the wings of birds or the shapes of whales. So if you look at the living world as a source of data, you can find extraordinary information. The problem is that our economies are now have developed an approach that's always been driven by physics and mathematics. However, the living world is a mix of physics and biology and chemistry. Today in businesses there are no chemists. So we need to start to look at the living world not just as something emotional, but as a source of data, as a library of solutions to help us mitigate climate change. Yesterday's work session was great. I think we need to learn to work together. And one last word. Today we can see that new projects are being structured in a very efficient way. We call this the magical square. This is a project I'm collaborating on with the IRD. If you can bring on board a university, a business, an institutional partner, and an NGO, you can achieve a miracle. The university can contribute to developing knowledge. The company can help deploy the project and ensure its economic sustainability. The NGO can take care of the lobbying, because NGOs are helping make progress in terms of regulations, and then an institutional partner, a local authority, to provide political frameworks. So I'm sure there's a lot of solutions to be found in the living world. And we mustn't forget that we must protect biodiversity, climate, and the ocean. If we need to fulfill these three objectives, we will have a better future. Thank you, Patricia, for her impressions. Before I hand over to you, Didier Réau, I would like to hear your feedback, Ange, on this lab. There is a major delegation from the Ivory Coast at Emerging Valley this year. So what did you bring to the table, and what were your feelings during this co-construction session? What do you think are the outcomes? Thank you, Samir, for your invitation. Côte d'Ivoire is a guest of honor at this summit. We took part in the lab yesterday, and we had very interesting conversations on solutions. We decided to place startups at the heart of the solutions we will provide to address global warming and to involve people and solutions in everyday life. We wanted to push things further and to bring to the table investors, funders, NGOs, institutional bodies, and startup businesses to allow us to come up with key solutions that borrow from the shapes, the forms, the processes, and the uses found in nature. So we had anticipated this process some years ago. We worked on light-based solutions and on the communication of insects that communicates fireflies. We used this to develop solutions, and we will give you feedback on how we structured this process. Of course, what's important is the next step, and it's about how we produce concrete actions that can allow us to bring people together, to bring solutions in order to address the issues that we mentioned. Thank you, Ange. Before we move over to Mr. Réau, I will conclude with Mrs. Corinne Bruno-Meunier, who's the General Director of the IRD. We have a few researchers from the IRD at this lab. You are at the heart of the issues we're talking about. We are talking about biomimicry, about nature-based solutions, about the digital projects. The IRD was a pioneer in this field with an application that has been collecting metadata on a very high level to preserve the environment, in particular plants. Can you tell us about the IRD's vision and how you were able to have this vision 10 years ago to start developing this app that is concretely contributing to protecting the environment today?
Thank you, Samir. Once again, thank you very much for associating the IRD with Emerging Valley. We work with local stakeholders and all of our African partners. Sometimes you need to marry up solutions that come from nature with digital technology. So our platform is participative, that collects data from, for example, botanical observations. With your smartphone, you can just simply take a picture of a plant and put it in the database, and this helps us collect all of this metadata onto our platform, which was originally set up by 4 institutions: the IRD, the CIRA, the Rigindera, and other French research institutions. And this has helped us gain a lot of information and data about flora. The application works on any continent, and wild fauna and flora helps us understand solutions, how can we gain inspiration from nature to make solutions emerge. Thank you very much. Would like to acknowledge several members of your organization that are here with us here today. We have researchers. Indeed, I would like to thank them for being here too. The IRD is a scientific partner and is very committed in Africa. Could we please give a round of applause to Corinne Bruno-Meunier? I'm now going to talk to Mr. Didier Réau. Before implementing the recommendations of the lab, I know that you care about nature-based solutions, biomimicry. So for you, what does it mean for you putting startups, authorities and ecosystems around the same table to try and co-create solutions for ecosystems in the Mediterranean? How do we basing solutions from nature in transforming them into digital technology? What can you tell us, please? Indeed, thank you very much for organizing this summit once again. It's a fantastic opportunity for us to share our knowledge. The objective and the first work that was done yesterday was to identify the general issues. Beyond cooperation between Africa and Europe, we want to, so mobilizing stakeholders is action that includes us in France, in Europe, because we find it difficult to break outside of the box and try to determine where we are going and what are the relevant objectives that we need to tackle. And of course, this is very relevant for all of us. We work very introspectively in a way with countries that have a lot of scientific research, a lot of budgets, a lot of organizations and government-run bodies that help us learn about certain things and apply them to the current world. Years ago, at the beginning of time, man was able to control and master nature. However, these days we are really seeing that the infrastructure that we build cannot regulate everything. So we therefore need to gain inspiration from nature to preserve humid areas, support reforestation programs. All of this is done very quickly, but it is all very recent, relatively speaking. We have shared with researchers and startups, and we've tried to understand how we can share this knowledge. I have just come from the sailing club in Marseille that has been working on a project to collect waste in the sea thanks to a net that comes out of the sewage pipes. So when the net is full, we need to go and collect this waste and dispose of it efficiently. This is a new delegation. It's in partnership with a local startup that works on maintaining local natural areas, recycling waste through knowledge, managing spaces, awareness from the public, and all of this has come from the UN World Congress, where we discussed solutions based on nature. It was an idea and a concept that came out of the board of directors and the department of the Bouches du Rhône. Patricia gave us a definition of the challenges. 5 of them were explained very clearly. First of all, enhancing the living world, and so implementing multi-stakeholder actions between different levels. Just so the same goes for Africa as it does for Europe. You, Mrs. Beasamida, you are fully up to date with everything that's happening. But I feel that we are still looking for solutions. You can teach us about all of this thanks to the Great Green Wall project. Such a corridor in the heart of Africa can only give fantastic opportunities and ideas that can be applied to the territory. So I think that we really have a lot to learn from this experience. And the second challenge is putting the living world back into the discussion to enhance and foster resilience. So we need to teach, we need to advocate, we need to train people across all levels. But everyone needs to be convinced about how important this is. We can teach it in schools. We can lead awareness campaigns. Children need to learn about it in summer camps, in play schools. This needs to be in every kind of activity. And the same goes for companies. Heads of companies and management need to have this aspect in mind in all of the activities that they do. We need to do what we call greenwashing. And of course, we need to value all of the local natural areas that we have around us, such as forests, but not just, all of the systemic ecosystems that are around them. For example, if we look at the If we look at marine life, we have marine plants and marine animals, such as Posidonia, which is its own ecosystem, and it captures carbon. When we protect biodiversity in the same way that Posidonia does, it helps us have a nursery. It helps us have a place to eat for local species. And it actually produces more oxygen than a tropical rainforest. So Posidonia is an essential species, an underwater species in the Mediterranean, and we need to protect this species. It is essential. The fourth challenge is to encourage shared governance of the planet. We have seen that the COVID crisis has only underlined the importance of working together, and without scientific knowledge we will not be able to save the planet. And we also need to be aware of the fact, just as Patricia was saying, that we need to observe nature. When we were at school, people might have told us about nature, etc., but we didn't really listen properly. People telling us about how farmers worked, but we didn't really realize how important it was. So nature-based solutions are a fantastic resource that we have today. The fifth challenge is strengthening knowledge acquisition. So we need observers, we need researchers, we need experts in the field, such as in the National Calanque Park. We need to be collecting data, transferring and transmitting data and know-how. At the metropolis, we have developed a biodiversity atlas that puts into practice all of the know-how the know-how that we have. The vision of biodiversity is of course done in natural spaces, at home, in your garden, and in the Bouches du Rhône we are discovering species that we didn't actually know existed before, or we might have even thought that they might have already become extinct. People have discovered species in their back garden, for example. So biodiversity is something that we need to focus on. We need to encourage people to take an interest in it. So it's not just scientists that can be involved in biodiversity. We need to be sharing our knowledge, our processes, our methods, and the way we can implement these. And this is all part of cooperation, and the cooperation that exists between Europe and Africa. Please give a round of applause for Mr. Didier Raoult. He summed things up perfectly, but we're going to carry on the discussion. Can digital technology and biodiversity be accelerators and something that will bring Africa and Europe closer together? We have a great iconic project, as you have mentioned, the Great Green Wall. I would be interested, Ange, to have your perspective on things. We've spoken to Patricia, and then of course we're going to come back to Mrs. Beasameda, because you have such expert knowledge of Chad. But first of all, Sarah Toumi, who heads up the Great Green Wall Accelerator at the United Nations. She's very committed to these issues. You accelerate projects that aim to nourish this Great Green Wall. It is a project which is very much supported by heads of states, by the UN. How can digital technology and entrepreneurship and nature-based solutions, as well as this mindset that we have mentioned today, this co-intelligence that we have spoken about, help this initiative, which must absolutely change the face of the African continent and have a huge impact on countries such as Chad? Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for inviting me back, Samir. As you have said, the initiative of the Great Green Wall was first of all an iconic political project that was set up in 2009. It aims to restore 100 million hectares in all of the Sahel area, from Mauritania to Djibouti, so 11 African countries in the sub-Saharan region. It has been around for 10 years, and we're making good progress. In 2021, after the One Planet University Congress that was part of the UN Congress against desertification in Germany, it was set up to coordinate the efforts. There are many solutions. On the ground, there are many stakeholders, NGOs, territories, companies that have solutions and are implementing them on different scales. There's also a political willingness to support the Great Green Wall project. A few days ago, the heads of state of the 11 sub-Saharan countries to discuss the project, and so I would like to congratulate the Minister of Chad, and they talked about the strategy in the future. This is going to be through the implementation of digital technology that will help coordinating and communicating between different stakeholders. We can all have the best willingness as possible, the best ideas, but if we are not able to connect this political effort with the expectations on the ground as we should, the Great Green Wall project will not get anywhere. We are currently working on a digital platform which aims to collect local data from the ground, so from stakeholders such as NGOs, companies, representatives of territorial authorities, as well as agencies and international organizations that have committed to fund the project with $19 million over the coming years. The point of this platform is to harmonize the access to information and direct strategies more effectively among the different local stakeholders. Accessing information, let me talk about that. What's happening is that in the different sectors and on different scales of the Great Green Wall project, sometimes it can be quite fragmented, so the platform is all about harmonizing this and bringing together stakeholders and projects. Financial partners are striving to implement actions. There are international finance opportunities, but the project as it stands is not actually formatted, is not suitable in a sense for all types of international investment. So what we're hoping is that this online platform will really change the game. Thank you very much, Sarah Toumi, the coordinator of the Great Green Wall project. I'm going to come back to you, Mrs. Beasemda. As we have heard, 2 million trees have been planted in Chad as part of this project. Why is this type of project so important for developing biodiversity and developing the economy in Chad? And what role do you think digital technology has to play in the Great Green Wall project? How can we enable people to collaborate? How can we ensure that researchers can cooperate alongside local authorities? just as Sarah said, the national agency of the Great Green Wall in Chad, I could say that Chad is really the first country to welcome, to have the national regional representation role. So so next it's going to be handing over to Mauritania. The agency of the Great Green Wall is a very important tool for conserving biodiversity. Today, in Chad, the experience has shown that the tool has real potential. And this tool is XSWIM. Between 2016 and 2019, almost 2 million trees were planted across all of the country. Within the planting sites of the program. This is so important also for the populations that live in areas where they face the effects of climate change firsthand. The National Great Green Wall Agency has been managed to restore over 35 million hectares of damaged land. In the Sahara, not only just restoring 10 meters of damaged land enables local households to live. So 35 million hectares is an incredible result. And for lakes and canals, we know that these are important ecosystems across the world, but at the same time we are seeing that when a tool such as the Great Green Wall Agency intervenes to resolve certain problems, it's fantastic. So this experience has managed to create 7,000 permanent jobs. So this is real impact. Thanks to these results, households can produce food, and enable cattle farmers to expand and develop as well. One farm can feed local families very effectively, and they are on the front line of climate change. Equipment has been given to local householders, small projects have been financed. With the variability of rainfall and other ecological aspects, it is so important for households to have a better understanding of the local situation. We need to households in the area are so often impoverished. In this implementation zone that the agency is working in, there are other complementary actions that are coming to strengthen the skills of households. By that I mean that we are able to implement certain information and teach households as soon as there is a variation. Then local villagers and peasants, we can see that they need more information. They need to enhance their production. We can see the need to develop the digital aspect of this program. Sustainable agriculture has developed an entire information system, a data center that helps farmers send a message and request support if ever they have any problems from a local expert. If the local experts cannot answer the farmer, then another specialist is called in to give expert information about certain crops, for example. So digital technology plays an essential role. Employability is a huge challenge too. The Great Green Wall protects biodiversity. In 2050, Chad will have a major problem of employability that will implicate 2 million young people. There are many young people who are working in the domain. They are not here today at this summit, but they are still present. They work on water management projects, energy projects, transformation projects. Transformation and conserving products is a very important sector too with regard to climate change. So there is food for thought. I think that we need to be continuing to promote the ideas of these projects, and because young startup companies in the Sahelian region are implementing the work of the agency.
There will actually be a workshop dedicated to ecosystem startups in Chad, which will be there on stage 4. We will have a digital delegation of startups from Chad. Thank you to the Minister of Innovation in Chad. Please, can I now ask you in 1 minute each to tell us, in the wake of COP26 and the various congresses, how can we translate all these intentions into concrete actions? 1 minute, please. One example, in Senegal, a committee of women are growing, they're vegetable growers, and they have water supply issues. So we create basins where they can practice fish farming to bring proteins into their diet, and we help them create basins, and we also have pumps in these basins connected with our institute in the Var, where we can monitor water quality to help them through visio conference to keep the fish healthy. So bringing biodiversity back into the villages and the cities, growing vegetables into cities is very important to bring the living world back into cities. Biodiversity and the ocean are our only protection against climate change. There will be terrible periods of starvation, and bringing the living world back is bringing diversity back into our diets. It means working with insects. It means we should stop overfishing to create fish flowers. We should create protein flowers from insects. And we need all the vitamins and nutrients to be preserved and to be used more wisely, and digital technologies can help us do that. Thank you, Patricia, for this word of conclusion. Dear President, how can we move from statements of intention to action? How do we move from intentions to action? Well, it takes a lot of will, and I think that this will is becoming more widespread. People are becoming aware of the issues. Messages are being sent on a regional, national, international scale, as shown by the global congresses that have been sending a strong message to have all the stakeholders engage in protecting nature and biodiversity. I'll give you one example in our department, whose land has been overbuilt and over-artificialized and urbanized. The Étang de Berre, the Pond of Berre, is an amazing playground to observe how our principles of regenerating nature can be implemented. This lake is at the meeting point of two rivers. It's got a certain level of salinity that's being threatened by an excessive input of water deriving from hydroelectric plants. So how can we ensure that we maintain our economic activity and to produce energy while preserving this environment and the wetlands that are associated with it? This lake poses the issue of our supply, our resources of drinking water and agricultural water. We are beginning to have water shortages in the area, so we need to orchestrate these different issues, working with industries, with agriculturals, and with residents and citizens. I think this is an opportunity to show that we're able to fix our mistakes. And finally, better managing water is also to do with ensuring the security of populations, because whenever we focus on nature, we are, of course, minimizing vulnerabilities for people. Thank you, Didier Réou. Now over to Corinne Bruno-Menu from IRD. Just 1 minute. Yes, it's not a lot of time, but IRD is, of course, embracing everything that's been said about innovation, about science and employability. It's important today to use the green economy as a source of jobs. We gave examples among many in our labs. We are working with our partners in Africa to preserve biodiversity. To conclude, I would like to say two things. First of all, to work better, we must keep science open. Open science is what allows us to provide our partners with scientific data, publications. For the past 30 years, the IRD has been providing its publications on an open basis, and this is being supported by France and Europe. We have a national plan for open science, and there is a French plan being developed by the Ministry of Higher Education. This is very important, and we want to keep doing this because we won't find any solutions if we do not provide open access to our findings. And the second aspect is participative science. As we've seen, we have many citizens, individuals, NGOs, associations who want to share their knowledge. As you said, there are many observers of biodiversity, and participative science is being organized today through a platform called the Science Society Alliance, which the IRD is part of, and there's all sorts of initiatives emerging in France, platforms for climate. Participative science is something that the IRD supports through its teams, through our labs, and through our partners to develop these two aspects, which can help us disseminate our work. Thank you very much. Ange, one final word, just 1 minute. So I'll conclude with a call to action. Africa is a growing continent, and in its modernization, Africa is bound to consume a lot. We need a lot of pilot projects. We're talking about biomimicry, biodiversity. If we do not take action, all these theories, all the studies we implement will not produce anything. So it's time to take action, beginning with pilot projects, to place innovation at the heart of these pilots, and to achieve findings that we can then scale up to fight against global warming, to preserve biodiversity, and this is how we can reach our objectives. Thank you, Ange. Thank you very much, Sarah. If you're here, if you could appear on screen and give us a very brief word of conclusion and hope. To conclude, I'd say that the Great Green War has been an example of high-level lobbying in 2021. As you could hear in the context of the different international events like COP26 and so on, heads of state have committed, including our president or the heads of state of the partner countries. Now we are waiting for non-state actors to get involved. We need solutions to be fed back to us. We need to stay in touch with institutions, international bodies, and work together to collaborate on this. Thank you, Sarah Toumi. Thank you, Ange. Please give a round of applause to our panelists and to thank them for sharing their experiences. Our Minister of Innovation from Chad, the Vice President of the Conseil Departmental, Corinne Brunon-Meunier, Ange Balma, Sarah Toumi, and Patricia Ricard. So we're going to take a group picture before we move on to our next roundtable.